that's so far beyond a stranger killing somebody because somebody got punched. And I think really the unspoken truth is to this whole thing, it wasn't a man who did the murder. Because look, she went and bought this little saw that has this little blade that goes like this. If a man had done it, you just send her in to buy a Sawzall. Because that's got a blade this big and it cuts through steel. I mean, I'm making stuff up on a make-up story. I mean, what got me about Friday and her need for the notes. Mark Twain said it best. Mark Twain said, an honest man need not have a good memory. Which means we've all had tragedies in our lives that we remember the details of. This has to have been the most tragic thing in her life, yet she can't testify. She's throwing a little hissy fit on Friday because she's got to have her notes. The only reason you need notes is when you've made the story up and you want to be certain that you're consistent within the story. And the reason that that doesn't work, the reason you know that story is completely made up and false, aside from the fact that when my kids were small, I wanted to give them a quarter for real tears, and we get all facial expressions. I didn't see any tears. Is the fact that, let's take the SANE report. I don't remember refusing to sign it. I didn't say I took a bath twice. That's what the same person puts down that she said. How easy is it to simply say, I didn't do that, I didn't say that, that's not me. Got to have the report in front of you to be certain. I know we're talking jury selection up front, opening statement. Part of my concern was not having motive, but do I even need it now? I mean, it's not part of my responsibility. But this case has really morphed into two things. You either believe that crap, or you listen to the physical evidence that I presented and will summarize in a few minutes in this case. It's really just simply the yin or yang at this point. I mean, I don't know what to make of that. But in terms of motive, there are some things that we just don't know. But now, since I don't have to prove it, you've got the two sides. And that's really what you decide on now. I mean, there was a really bad movie from the 80s. But instead of it being just simply a week of this stuff, the weekend of this stuff, it was a whole week of fun with Ramsey's body. And even though we heard a lot in opening statement about this being a suicide, it really is not a suicide. Never has been a suicide. It's been murder from the beginning. I want to start with the I didn't have time to put a graphic together. I wanted to put a graphic together that was very pretty and talked about the saw and all the evidence on the saw, and that would have been my note, but we didn't have time. So just remember, you have available to you the videos from the Secretary of State and from Lowe's and from the police station and the stills from BP that show that she is not distressed at all about what happened. Any of you that had the children or had a spouse or had somebody close to you, to realize her reaction and her non-reaction and her behavior afterwards is not consistent with that which we've experienced. You're selected as jurors. You're brought in here because you have those experiences. We don't ask you to leave them out there. We ask you to make that a part of what makes you, you, to make the decision in this case. But when we think about the saw, she didn't go once to get the saw. She didn't go twice to get the saw. She went 3 times to buy the saw. That we have proof of. I have no proof that she's whacked in the side of the head twice because she gets the wrong saw. Or that in the middle of chopping him up, she has to call the company up because the warranty on the saw, not the warranty, but she calls customer service because the first saw isn't working. saw is found by the head in the bag. The burned box is found in another bag further down the street. Another part of the burned box is found further down the street. The skew on the box matches the skew on the receipt. Chris Behrman comes in and tells you, this is the saw that I sold to her. And the DNA comes back and says, that's Ramsey's blood on the saw. That saw, forget her story, that saw is what connects her to every element of this case, from the time that she purchased it on Monday through the time that the lab tested, and it's his DNA on that saw. I mean, think about her Monday routine. He's murdered on Saturday night. I still can't get over ordering the pizza on Sunday. Who does that? Who calls Domino's while your son's dead upstairs and orders a pizza? And then Monday morning, we go to Lowe's. We go to Corey Toller at the probation department. We go to the police station to list him missing. We go to the insurance company to report, to sign off on the insurance. We call Mother Waddles to donate the car. And then we return back to Lowe's 2 more times. Like a normal day in the life. That's 36 hours after she's murdered her son. We know when the murder happened. Let's go with the first one. And, you know, it's just me. Maybe I'm too close. But this is new. Is it not like the drugs are already in the system? This is 604. I understand this one at 801. We know when he died. Because you have 3 tests, and the missing test at 11. And we have Donna's statements to all the neighbors and to everybody else that he left the house at 6:30. That ain't Freudian. That's her adding into it. And if you listen to that whole story, the we did this, he procrastinated, who do you think she's talking about? Some of those facts are the actual facts, except now she's talking in the third person like it's the dude that did it, not her. Don't discount a lot of those facts. The vomiting, the being distressed, the amount of effort it takes. I am not going to show you those photographs again. I don't need to. I do apologize for having to show them in the first place. But if you dare to look at them later on, take a look at how large he was and how much effort it would have been with an 1.5 inch saw to rip him the way that she ripped him. Next. Can you believe anything at all that she says? When you look at the number of times we have on record that she lied. She lies to Trim Treppa on Sunday. It was another reason why you know it wasn't suicide, because he was planning from Friday night, Ramsey, to fix that car on Saturday or Sunday. God is going to commit suicide, isn't going to plan for the future. Patricia Patanzos, later on in the week, have you seen him? He's missing. The detailed plan is part of the premeditation. All the things that she had to do to convince people. She called everybody up Sunday. He's lying dead upstairs, and she's calling Allison. He left. He's missing. She's calling Carolyn. He's left. He's missing. She's calling her mother-in-law. He's left. He's missing. Then she has a chance to go to McEwen, Velasco, and Behrman at Lowe's. Well, I'm doing household projects. I've never seen that household. Corey Towler lies to her about what's going on. Jim Charette at State Farm. I got to tell you how the intruder knew so much about their State Farm insurance. Even with my wife, I don't think we discussed the intimate details of how we're insured. And here it is, he knew it all. We have to go sign the exclusion form. We got to take him off the car. We got to donate the cut him on the wall. Hey, look here in the glove box is the title. It's in your husband's name. We got to change it. Officer Joe Mason, detective. Did Joe Mason look to you like if she would have said to him, there's somebody out in the parking lot in the car that just murdered my husband, my son, or, hey, at my house there's a guy who's there, just murdered my son. I know he's still there. I just dropped him off before I came here. That he would have said to her like he did with the missing persons report, you know, we're a little busy around here. Why don't you come back? I get off shift at 4 o'clock. Come on back before then. And, you know, if I've got a couple extra officers, maybe I'll send them out to, you know, pick up the murderer. She lied to every police officer that she spoke to. And then she comes up here and wants to be credible. Next. I wish I could tell you how the Xanax got in there. These are the kind of things that we think most likely ways of delivery. Dissolved in the soda or coffee that he took, would have been crushed and placed in food, would have been taken orally, so it would have been dissolved. That's awful English on my part. Take orally by this. Sorry about that. And then, or crushed and injected. Why we don't know this? Well, his arm is missing, and his stomach's ripped out and empty and laying in a snowbank. No possible way we know what the delivery mechanism was. We know one thing from Dr. Spitz. It was 400 nanograms. And that's lethal. Next. Here are the premeditation factors pre-murder. She had to have sufficient Xanax. She had to buy the garbage bag. She had to buy the tarp. She had to buy the new vacuum cleaner. I don't know why the old one wasn't good enough. Bought carpet cleaner with the vacuum cleaner. We buy the air fresheners. We see them all over. After all, that body's in the house for 6 days. It's going to smell, aside from the bleach and the burning of it. Next. She has to prepare at some point a cover story to figure out how she's going to explain this to everybody. She's got to decide how to kill her. She has to decide how to deliver the Xanax. She has to decide when she's going to kill, and she has to decide where she's going to kill. That all has to go into it. This didn't happen spur of the moment. Everything was set up at the right time and the right place. Next. We know it's not a hanging. Dr. Spitz, ligature strangulation along with asphyxiation, and that there were horizontal marks, not vertical, not up. And as he indicated, there was crushed cartilage at angles not consistent with hanging. So again, we know it wasn't suicide. We know it wasn't a hanging, that it was a strangulation. You saw the photograph where you got the ligature mark. So he's got 400 nanograms of Xanax, which would make him comatose or unconscious, allows her a chance to get up behind on him. Again, he didn't voluntarily take these drugs. 234 days he'd been in that program. 1,016 alcohol tests. 16 drug tests. No positive results. In fact, when he goes to the probation department on Tuesday before he's murdered, he asked Corey in this letter, could you take me off? On Friday, she says yes. On Friday, she gets the judge to sign it. She told you there was no way, based on his behavior and based on how well he was doing and how conscientious he was, that this would have been voluntary. She releases him and never really gets a chance to tell him because the judge signs it on Friday. He's murdered Saturday. 400 nanograms of alprazolam, Xanax. 100 nanograms is a high normal dose. 350 is a lethal dose. Again, comatose, unconscious. Unable to defend himself is the big thing, because you have to ask how a diminutive person could get up on him. You heard Allison, you heard Tim Treppa, you heard a lot of people saying this was a surprise, that he's a guy that can defend himself, which is another issue with some stranger coming in. Not a small guy. Not a guy who's going to let somebody walk into his house. But he's unable to defend himself, because remember, at the time he's dead, he's got 400 nanograms in him. And how is it that you get somebody to drink a cocktail of Coke, Xanax, and bleach and not live? How much bleach can you drink before you spit it out among them? Just touching your lips, much less enough to have 400 nanograms of Xanax in you. Again, I'm trying to justify a story that doesn't make any sense, not even true. Next. Another thing, okay? Point I was making during cross. She sees the murderer for 6 days. She can hear the height, weight, sound of the voice, scratches on his face. The murderer knows her. The murderer knows Ramsey. He's a friend of Frank Werner. Do you not think that those are a significant number of clues? I mean, the fact that this guy, he made us look like assholes with Frank Werner. And if he knows that much about Ramsey, the police would be all over absolutely every one of his friends, every contact he's made, every phone number that Stan Brew told you. They'd have brought Frank Werner in and leaned on him. Who are your friends? They'd have gotten his phone records, his friends' phone records. They'd have done this whole thing to find out who's been missing for 6 days. But we sit on him instead. We play the martyr. She prefers to remain charged. 16 months before I hear these details. Mother of the year? I don't think so. Next. This struck me as a little hypocrisy in action. In May 2013, this is some of the questions. This is where I got the questions for this morning. I didn't know I was going to use them, but allegedly Ramsey threatened suicide on the 13th and 14th. He dies May 15th. Ramsey's immediately hospitalized, and they secure guardianship. Yet, in January next, when he's murdered, allegedly murdered by a strange man, she buys a pizza, she lies to family, neighbors, and police, buys a salt loads, cancels his driving privilege, donates his car, and dumps his body parts. Sure is a whole lot of change from I'm threatening suicide to I'm dead. Next. Physical evidence. Things that you can count on that you know. Ramsey's DNA is all over that S10 Blazer. It's on the saw blade. It's on the saw handle. It's on the saw cord. It's on the bleach carpet in the bedroom. It's in the bathroom. It's on the stairwell. It's on the kitchen storm door. Donna's DNA is on that Coke bottle line right next to his head and in those gloves that we showed you at the scene. 1 in 590 million. It's not her DNA in that matched set of gloves. Next. We know that it's her up there. Erica Matthews says it's her. Randy Simons is the young student, says it's her. Amanda Sampler, the housewife who's up there with her kids, says it's her. Ken Reed, the UPS driver, indicates that's the car, as well as Dan Brew putting her phone in the location. Any more? No. I feel an obligation always in these big cases to read the key elements of the first-degree murder instruction, just so you understand what my burden is. First, the defendant had to have caused the death, that is, he died as a result of strangulation. And you have to show that the defendant intended to kill Ramsey Scrivo, and that this intent to kill is premeditated, that is, thought out beforehand. I think I showed you all those factors that had to be gone through before and after. Remember, the factors afterwards are just as critical. All the stuff she does on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday to continue the lies, to say she's down there by the lake looking for him when she knows he's in the bathtub. All the perpetuation of all the stories. That's all part of the intent. As well as dumping Ramsey's phone when things start getting hot. That's what Mr. Tyner came in and said. And then she's telling the neighbors and the family that the phone was picked up by the police, and she wasn't told yet that the phone was picked up by the police. She tells Tim Trepper that the police want a photo from her before the police ask for a photo, because they don't ask for a photo. That's all that preparation and maintaining the plan. Fourth, the killing was deliberate, which means the defendant considered the pros and cons, thought about it, and chose her actions before she did it. There must have been a real and substantial reflection long enough to give a reasonable person a chance to think twice about the intent to kill. I mean, you heard Dr. Spitz, that strangulation takes approximately 3 minutes. You've got to stay there and do it for 3 minutes, much less the drugs in the system to render him unconscious, to be able to get up on him, to strangle him. Can't be the result of sudden impulse without thought or reflection, and it wasn't justified or excused. You've got counts 2 and 3, which basically are the counts of having mutilated the body and transported the body. I think those are as obvious as it gets. I'd ask you to go back and deliberate. Convict her of first-degree murder. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, we're going to take a short break. Please retire to the jury room. Do not leave the jury room.
Rise for jury.
All right, you may be seated. Gentlemen, this will be a very short break, so stay close to this. Sure.
Judge, Mr. Chris, are you ready?
Not yet. Income.
None of our guys are here yet. 0. Not yet. I'm supposed to be bringing them up, but none of our guys are here.
People versus Bruce then?
Your appearance, please. Your Honor. Up here, Judge? Yes.
Okay.
Wilson.
Afternoon, Judge.
Good afternoon.
Anthony Sorensen, on behalf of the people, time and date set for arraignment, providing counsel, copy information, legal disclosure.
We acknowledge receipt of the information. Daniel Finwall on behalf of Mr. Lucen. Date and time for arraignment, Judge. As far as the arraignment, we would stand mute, waive any formal readings, ask the court to plea of not guilty.
Colonel Lisa.
Judge, at this time, that opportunity to discuss this matter with counsel. It's my understanding the defendant will be pleading guilty to count 1, requesting 7411. In exchange, counts 2 and 3 would be dismissed as not necessary.
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right, swear to defendant.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Sir, state your name.
John Edward Ruben?
You understand, sir, you're waiving all the rights on the advice rights form you signed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is your signature, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
It's my understanding you should plead guilty to the charge of possession of analyze. Is that right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you understand, sir, the maximum penalty you may receive is up to 2 years in prison?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you understand the plea bargain agreement, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
You're pleading guilty to that charge, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
In return, the prosecutor is willing to dismiss counts 2 and 3, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is that the complete plea bargain agreement, sir?
If I may, Your Honor, it's also pursuant to 7411 and felony.
I grant or deny 7411. The prosecutor can have no objection to it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Your Honor. I just want to say it.
All right, no, that's fine. Thank you. Is that complete plea bargain agreement, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is everything you expect from the plea bargain agreement set forth on the record?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have there been any promises or threats to get you to plead guilty today?
No, Your Honor.
Are you pleading guilty of your own free will and choice?
Yes, Your Honor.
And are you accepting a plea bargain agreement of your own free will and choice?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you understand you will not at a later date be able to claim there were promises or threats that caused you to plead guilty?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have there been any such promises or threats, Mr. Sorrentino?
No, Your Honor.
Counsel?
None, Your Honor.
Please tell me, sir, what you did on March 9, 2015 in the city of Warren leads you to believe you're guilty of the crime of possession of marijuana.
I had a bucket in my pocket without a prescription.
All right, is court complied with MCR 6.302?
Yes, Judge.
Yes, Your Honor.
Charge of possession of analog, sir. How do you plead? Court will accept the plea. I'll refer to probation. I'll set sentencing floor.
June 30th at 9 o'clock.
That is all. I will continue by.
Thank you, Your Honor. Have a great day.
You're welcome.
All rise, please. just give it back to him. I mean,
Okay.
take 4 or 5, whatever you want to bring.
Okay, I'll step out, I'll call first, and then I'll go down and present.
I don't know if I'll be able to get to the phone, but...
No, I'll call.
Oh, okay.